Welcome to the Thought Balloons podcast. I am your host, Jeff Fulsham. With me today is writer of many different comic books, Fangs and Foul Play, Cthulhu's Hard to Spell, does things in I Like Robots, and she presses upcoming anthology Becoming. Welcome to the show, Leanne Ingino.
Hey, Jeff. Thanks for having me. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. I hope you are doing well as well. Too many words. Well, I'm
I'm
bad at talking, yet I run a podcast.
I just got my hair re-blued, so.
Oh, nice. You have blue hair in your picture there.
I do.
Are you still with the blue, or are you on another color?
For COVID, well, we're still, COVID's obviously still ongoing, but for that first portion where we couldn't go to the hair salon for like a long time, it got like more than halfway grown out, which is like the longest time I had my hair like be natural or at least partially natural in, I don't know, 5-6 years probably.
Nice. COVID was the first time since middle school that I actually dyed my hair.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I went with like a kind of like more on the blue side of like teal, but because I had to worry about like green screen issues and stuff for streaming.
Oh yeah, that doesn't work well for me, green screen.
Yeah, but yeah, that's fun. It's all grown out and almost all cut out by now. So I think I don't know, it doesn't I always felt like that was a young man's game unless like you kept up with it. Like if you were someone who had always like done cool things with their hair and like their style, like it makes sense, and like people kind of come to know that as like, oh, that's just something that they do. And so carrying it on past the age of 30 isn't like a big deal. But like I got some shame from my parents and my sisters about it when when I dyed my hair. They're like, you're too old to be doing that. I'm like, shut up. No, I'm not. You don't know. I have friends that do this all the time. I can do whatever I want. I'm a grown-ass man. You can't tell me what to do with my hair.
Yeah, it's your hair,
And then I let it grow out, and I never
Yeah, mine stopped bugging me to change it back. So they learned it wasn't going to happen, or if it wasn't going to happen because they were asking me to. So.
Oh yeah, like there's a lot of things in my life that I've gotten my family to like give up on me about.
Right.
Dyeing my hair wasn't really one of them. I think I had like a really weird experience with it the first time. I tried to go blonde, and we tried to do it at my house.
Ooh.
And my mom didn't know anything about like bleaching hair or anything. Yeah. And she got scared when my hair turned orange and washed it out. And so I had orange hair. Like we're talking like tang colored hair for a while, because it was, I was bleaching my hair, right? I thought it was cool. I thought it was better than blonde, but yeah, I don't know. It was weird.
And if it's like not patchy, like orange can still look pretty cool.
Yeah, no, it wasn't patchy or anything. Yeah. It was just like, I mean, I guess there was like probably some lighter areas. I don't really remember. I was like in 8th grade, and that was so long ago. I'm ancient. I'm old. I'm so old. But yeah, blue hair is pretty cool. I actually still have some dye. I don't know. I've thought about doing it again just over my normal hair color so that it's darker. But
they have stuff that's like blue for brown hair and stuff, and it's kind of more like it shows like a tint,
rather
than like blue. I definitely bleach mine I don't bleach mine. I have people bleach mine because
Right. Yeah.
I have tried it and it didn't go well.
Yeah, I went with like really like I guess it's like manic panic is like good for your
Right.
hair or whatever. But I left the bleach in for like as long as they said like is safe to leave it in.
Yeah.
They're like, wash it out after like so many minutes, but make sure you don't leave it in for longer than whatever. And I was like, okay, that's the number I'm going for.
Yeah.
And I don't know, my hair did get a little straw like because of that, but you know, it works. But speaking of cool hairstyles and cool hair colors, that is definitely a part of fantasy things, and I know that some of your work is in the fantasy genre. When talking to creatives about creative things, I always like to ask this question first: how and why? How did you get started, and why did you stick with it?
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, I wouldn't say I've stuck with it my whole life. I've had periods that it comes and goes, and now I'm at one of those where I'm like, okay, this is definitely something I want to keep going and fan the flames of it and make it a hopefully lifelong thing. Or if I ever feel like actually retiring, I can't imagine like fully retiring and doing nothing. But if I ever get to that point, then sure, we'll stop then. So my grandpa used to always like read / make up stories for my brother and I have a little sister, but she's 9 years younger than me. So of course my memories when he was doing it, it was just me and my brother when I was young enough. And so he would always tell us these stories, and it's funny because later I recognized some of these. I was like, oh, some of these are like Norse myths and stuff. I was like, I swear I thought my grandpa wrote this. I was like, oh, this is just like a myth or a fairy tale or whatever he was reading, or he remembered, might have embellished it a little bit.
As a lot of spoken word tradition is.
Yeah, and it is kind of more. I mean, I'm not a great narrator where I can't remember stuff well, so I have to read. But I think that if you can remember stuff and read it out loud, it kind of, or sorry, speak it without like reading it, it has a little bit more impact.
For sure.
So that kind of got me interested in stories, and I started reading fantasy books in middle school. I mean, I read like Nancy Drew and some other stuff when I was younger, but I think I have a very poor long-term memory too. So I always dig up. I'm like, this is right.
Middle school, our history is what we make it. Our history is what we choose it to be. We're not so concerned with the truth here. We're concerned about good stories. We're both storytellers. Whatever sounds good, that's the truth.
There we go. Yeah. Well, as long as nobody contradicts me and comes back later. No, that didn't happen.
Like, that's like hell. That's how I remember it. Right? Maybe you're remembering it wrong.
So yeah, I started reading like fantasy in like middle school, and then high school. Kind of played. I never really wrote long stories in high school, but I wrote a couple short stories. I played around with language making. I'm actually working on that a little bit right now, not for Fangs and Foul play, but for another comic called The Orb Teller, which is slated for sometime in 2022. Because I decided I didn't have enough work to do, so I'm working on a symbolic language system now. Nice. I really enjoy it though. It's like that. This is the fun part, but at the same time, I have to have these deadlines to get it done.
Right. Yeah.
And I totally lost track of the question. How did I get started and why? Okay. I wrote a lot of poetry in high school, and that's probably what I've been most consistent with, this poetry on and off. And I think a lot because just for mental health, both because of mental health reasons, like as a funnel to channel it, and then also oftentimes if I'm in a in a really good mood, I will go back to those emotions and pull them into my poetry.
Right.
So it can be an outlet, but it can also be something to pull upon and use and talk about in my poetry. And then I've had some periods where I just didn't write as much either because I didn't have time, or sometimes there'll be people in your life who are discouraging you, unfortunately, as happens. And so, kind of put me in a state where I wasn't writing, but I'm no longer around. I don't try not to associate with those people anymore. And so at this point, I've decided that it's something that I really want to make a career out of. And a couple years ago, you're probably right, about a couple years ago, 2 or so years ago, I hadn't really thought about comics, because I think one thing that gets a lot of writers stuck is thinking that they have to do the art. And then realizing, oh, I don't have to do the art, but I do have to have the funds to pay somebody to do the art.
Right.
So, if we can make the funds work, then we can, I could always write a comic and just not have it made. But
yeah,
it's not the same thing. I do want to have it made.
I think, like, you can always write anything and not have it made, but when it's a
True.
visual, like, medium, like film, comics, TV shows, things like that, it's it never feels truly finished, right? Until like you have the visual element of it.
Definitely. I can put up a short story online, and maybe it's not published on Amazon, but people can read it and enjoy it. But if I put up a comic script online, I feel like that's gonna have a very limited audience. I mean, I do actually have that as a stretch goal for people who are interested in that sort of thing. And I think it is interesting to compare it to the finished comic, but on its own, there's a limited subset of people who just read comic scripts or who just read film scripts without wanting to actually see the visual part of it.
That's interesting. The only times I've ever sought out the scripts to things have been either to learn from them or to adapt them. So I'd be really curious to see. I mean, I gotta assume the majority of people who go and look for those things specifically, like the scripts divorced of a visual part, are probably doing the same thing. But I'd really like to meet someone who's just like, no, this is just this. This is my preferred way of consuming movies. I just like reading the scripts. I don't need the visuals or the sound effects or the music or anything. I just want to see the script. Like, that's got to be a really interesting person.
And I think probably only, I don't know if anybody who's not a writer would do that.
That's what I'm saying, right? It's like they got to be a real interesting person if that's how you prefer to consume your media, is just by just the scripts. But you said so you mentioned kind of like the ebb and flow of being able to write, and how you've stopped associating with negative like people who negatively impact the sort of like striving for and achieving like the goal of being a writer. Is that like how you tend to deal with those kinds of people, or like do you have other like ways of communicating with them to be like, hey, look, like, I know it's not likely, but you got to shoot your shot, kind of like thing?
It really depends on how the person's in my life. If it's a partner, there's really kind of a limited way you can deal with that. I mean, it depends on how negative a person is,
Yeah.
Some people aren't going to change, and so those people aren't really in my life anymore. And my husband, he's very much supportive of what I do, so that's great. He doesn't really like short stories, so I don't show him a lot of my short stories because I know it's not his thing.
Right.
But he supports me writing. I don't know that I have a lot of friends who are really discouraging of it, so that's good. I'm not at the point where I'm getting trolls yet. So it'll be interesting to see how I deal with that. If I can block them, I will probably just block them, because I think that's I don't think it would be healthy to engage.
I can speak from a very small amount of experience and say that it is not healthy to engage with that kind of thing. I've had a couple of incidents with people on Twitch, like 3 or 4 times out of the 3 years that I've been streaming, so not very often.
Right.
The art community on Twitch seems to be pretty easygoing people, which is nice. I'd like to think that if I were to ever really experience like trolls, like as it will be expected if I too become some kind of, famous creator or, famous within the comic book world,
Right. The more your name's out there, the more visible you are.
I gotta hope that my time in art school helps me, because like every class I took, half of the learning was done during critiques, and like you have to get used to people like busting your balls and like to use an outdated term, but like you really got to get used to people like criticizing your work and like telling you what's wrong and like all that kind of stuff. I think it's done 2 things for me. One is when people say, oh, that's bad, I don't like it, or that's bad, that sucks, or you suck, or whatever. If I'm in a self-loathing mode, I'll prod them and be like, but why?
Right.
Otherwise, I am very quick to just be like, that's not helpful at all. And I'm not gonna listen to you. Yeah. And on Twitch and things, it's easy enough to just be like, nope, ban. You're gone.
Yep.
I don't even give people a second chance. There's a lot of people out there who are like, you just a timeout. It's 10 minutes timeout. If you can learn to be, a civil person, you can come back and chat. I'm like, nope, ban. You're gone. I don't need that in my life.
No, you don't need to be worrying about it or thinking about it. And like I have enough obsessive thoughts that it's better gone than
as listeners of this show will know, is like I stream to work, like it's not the other way around. Like hanging out with people is fun, but like there are times when I will accidentally ignore chat because I'm drawing something, right? And it's a way for me to be like, I can't check my social medias, I can't get distracted by a TV show, because like there's always the chance of people coming in and like seeing you or whatever. And like but like that's why I'm there, is like to work, and I don't need the negative vibes while I'm working.
No. Man, I wish I could do that. Like, I don't know if anyone would want to watch me stream and write, but I don't think I could concentrate.
That was just about to say, it's really hard. I've written things with the chat. Last year during Inktober, we wrote a script in the last week of September as a community, and then I drew it in October.
Oh, fun.
But it's only ever like the only successful things that I've ever done, like as far as a writing stream, have been community interaction. Otherwise, I find that trying to maintain a conversation outside of this very specific thing that I'm trying to work on is next to impossible, because they're both using language center of your brain.
Right.
And it's really hard to process those 2 things at the same time. While it's talking and drawing, that's easier. But again, like there's, like I said earlier, still moments when it's like I'll look up and it's like, oh shit, 7 minutes ago this person said something. I'm like, I'm sorry. But like I didn't
find it difficult. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh no, go ahead.
Talking over. I actually find it difficult to listen to music with lyrics when I write. I can't listen to music with lyrics. I have to do instrumental or nothing.
Yeah, that's true too. I find I like to listen to music when I'm working in general. If I'm drawing, I can throw on a podcast or an audiobook, but generally I'm listening to music. When I'm writing, though, I like to listen to music that's sort of the genre, and
Uh-huh.
sometimes it can be hard to find.
Yeah, it's hard to
um
find good playlists.
yeah, like when I was doing work on Ozern West, when I was like doing those stories, it's really hard to find cowboy music that's not like that doesn't have lyrics in it.
Right.
It's really
Yeah.
hard to find that. So that was difficult.
It's easy
Luckily
to
though,
find
the
like background music from all those old cowboy movies.
yeah. Well, see, even that's like something, right? It's like you start looking up soundtracks from like, movies like McKenna's
Mhm.
Gold or something like that. And those songs have lyrics in them. They just
Mm,
like play the like instrumental versions in the movies.
right.
And so like that was difficult, but like so far I've been pretty lucky. The other two genres I work in are medieval fantasy and fantasy noir. So jazz music and like
Mm,
fantasy
mhm.
cinematic like orchestral scores, like those are pretty much just almost all. Well, I mean, I guess there's a lot of jazz with singing, but like you
Yeah.
can find a lot of instrumental jazz that feels like, you're
Right.
putting on like that detective's hat and lighting up the cigarette in the rain and you're doing all that stuff.
I was gonna say put on the Cowboy Bebop soundtrack, but personally, I would get too distracted and I'd be all into it. And like half of the songs, or more than half, are have lyrics anyways, so
Hmm.
it wouldn't end up working for me.
3, 2, 1, let's jam. Dude, when I we watched that a couple years ago, me and a group of friends sat down and rewatched that show. And by the like third or fourth episode, each one of us like knew a specific different part
That's fun.
of Tank. And
Yeah.
like we were singing along as like the intro ran. Like we've watched a bunch of shows together and we usually skip the intro, but that show we
Oh
always
yeah.
watched the intro because it's such a good song. Like it's
Yeah.
such a good song. Real quick tangent, because there was a
Mhm.
question I wanted to ask,
Oh yeah.
but real quick tangent. What do you think about the news about John Cho being Spike Spiegel in the live action thing?
Oh, okay. I don't know if I'm that familiar with um the actors, but I did
Hmm.
watch the trailer and I'm excited personally. I'm excited.
You have
I
no
try not to
issues
think
with him
of,
being 50 playing a 27-year-old?
oh, see, I didn't even know that. So, I didn't think in the trailer that he looked 50 though.
I mean, he has aged pretty well.
So, yeah.
If you go back and compare him now to Harold and Kumar, like the first Harold and Kumar,
Right.
he's like, oh yeah, okay, he's aged. But I
Yeah.
mean, he still looks pretty good. I just thought it was funny. I mean, I like him. He's a great actor. I'm really excited to see him play the role. I just thought it was funny that it's not like a where are they now? Like it's just they're like just
Right.
redoing the original
Yeah.
story. As I find it interesting that they didn't go for somebody younger. Kind of harkens back to like the old days of Hollywood. Like I've been watching the Twilight Zone as an example, like the
Mhm.
original Twilight Zone, and I'll be watching it and it'd be like Gary Sadie. It's a 37-year-old man from Wichita, and I'm like, this dude doesn't look like he's in his 30s. And I'll like Google the actor and I'll like look him up and I'll be like, okay,
Right.
so he was born on this date. It was filmed. He was 55 when he played
Uh,
this. Like, what the heck? Like, but like old
Hollywood does
Hollywood used to
that.
do that.
They still do that though. Or people who are like 13, they're playing like 18-year-olds or whatever. So I don't know. They do it all the time.
There was a real fun, and it even was like from the first iteration of it. And it
Uh-huh.
only gets better through time. Is if you've ever seen Wet Hot American Summer,
I have not.
one of my favorite comedy movies.
Uh-huh.
It's definitely not like PC for like
Right.
2021. There's definitely some problematic jokes in there, but it's like Michael Ian Black, David Wayne, Michael Showalter, what's the guy's name? He played Elliot from like Law and Order SVU. Chris Maloney, he's in it. Brad, oh God, what's the guy's name? Who does the voice of the Rocket Raccoon in Guardians of the Galaxy.
Mm.
Brad, whatever his name, he's in it. There's Amy Poehler, like a whole bunch of people are like in it, like pretty big names. And like the one of the main jokes of it is that most of the adult cast are like well into their 30s, are playing teenage camp counselors. And then they do like 10-15 years after they made that original movie, they went back. So I guess another part of the joke is it all takes place on the last day of camp. 10 or 15 years later, they went back to film first day of camp, so they're even older. Like, it's so good. It's so freaking funny. Anyway,
well, it's great if they like when sometimes they'll make fun of like the stuff that they're doing, you know.
Yeah,
I don't know if it's really breaking the fourth wall, but yeah, meta humor, or whatever. Not always humor, but yeah.
I'm a fan of that. But earlier I was we were talking about like dealing with like negative criticisms and stuff, and I had mentioned going to school. Do you have a degree in like writing or anything like that?
I do not. I actually just finished a 6-month, it's usually a year, but I did a little bit accelerated poetry program, I guess. It's not really an MFA, but it was kind of that sort of a style.
Okay.
So that's actually like one of my dreams that like for no other reason than just want to get an MFA in poetry, but I'm like, should I really spend that much money and time just to get this thing? I don't know. Anyways, we'll see, because they're not cheap unless you can get them covered and whatnot.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just finished that, and there was a lot of critique. We critiqued every week, but half the class got critiqued every other week. And I've taken various writing courses throughout school, but my degree was actually in fashion, and I decided I didn't want to. Now I am actually not too far from LA, but at the time I didn't want to live in LA. I didn't want to live in New York. I did live in San Francisco, which was starting to grow more in fashion, and I don't know if it's grown more since I left there. But it still wasn't as large as the others. And I mean, this can be true of many creative industries unless you're doing it on your own. But I really didn't want to start out just sewing or doing some of the grunt work. I don't like sewing. I usually make a costume for myself every year, but this year I don't have time with the Kickstarter.
Right.
So I'm going to wear an old one. I love having something done and completed and being like, yeah, I did that. That was, but I hate the actual like process of sewing. So I was like, oh my gosh, I can't imagine doing this as a job. And I love designing and creating, but I didn't like those other things enough to do it. And there are definitely people who, if you have the money, you can get into it at a different level. But at that time, I did not. so life kind of took a different trajectory for me there.
I mean, it's like breaking into comics as a writer, right? Like you have to have that money to like hire artists.
Very much so, but I definitely have more passion for writing, and so that's where it was. I think that in high school I kind of thought that I was gonna write or do something creative. In my mind, I was thinking that fashion would make more financial sense. Until I kind of got to the end of it, I was like, oh, I don't really want to know if I want to do this. Like, I feel like if somebody ever wants to fund my designs and make them, I would be all down for it. But here you go, thank you. Yes, please make them. I would love to see them. First. Yeah, but please, somebody, be my patron. But I don't have enough passion for it to do it from the ground up.
Right. Yeah. Here's an interesting idea. Maybe you can work the fashion into like Kickstarter stretch goals or add-ons or something like that.
Well, I definitely want to cosplay as like some characters, so I'm trying to like, when I do a female character, be like, okay, how can I make this so that I can do a cosplay, and then that'd be cool.
It's not as far-fetched as you would think. I had put on a couple of like ridiculously high tier rewards. Like I think $500 was I'll help you finish up a script and like write a short
Right.
story or like draw a short story comic for you. Like $1,700 was like one full issue, and like
Uh-huh.
$10,000 was like 3 issues or 4 issues of like a comic. And I actually got some feedback in one of my backer surveys when I was asking questions like, um what other things would you like to see, like pins,
Yeah.
hats, that kind of stuff.
Right. Right.
And one person was like, any small thing is cool, but like on your next Kickstarter, like please have like one of those like draw my comic things for me, because I'm definitely gonna like go for
Oh,
that.
nice.
I
Yeah.
was like, oh, I had those as like a thing that I'd be totally down and willing to do, but
Yeah.
like, and there's a little inside baseball here for the listeners. I put them on there because I was like, oh, these are like ridiculously high. Nobody's going to
Right.
go for them. Like, I hope they do, because it'd be cool work, but like, nobody's going to go for them. And they're going to make the higher tiers that I want people to actually go for, make them seem less expensive. Right.
Right.
Like, I figured it was going to entice people to like the $99 and $200 tiers. And I
Mhm.
actually did. People did take those, but like, I don't know, like if fashion's like a thing you're into, like maybe like I don't know, you could
Yeah.
work that in, like I'll design like a custom dress for you, or like
Right.
a suit. Somebody out there might take you up on the offer, you never know
I'm
what
trying to
can
get
happen.
this I got this really cool steampunk choker piece at a Ren fair, and I'm trying to get like a custom one made with like a little pendant of Fang hanging down from it. So
Ooh.
I don't know if it's going to be ready in time for the Kickstarter. So I'm like, all right, it might be next Kickstarter. We'll see how it goes. But I was like, I've never seen anybody offer this before, so it's kind of unique. I can do it with a little bit of a higher reward tier, So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I don't think, I mean, I'm fairly new to Kickstarter, even as like someone who's like purchases things through them.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
But I mean, I've looked at maybe like 2-3 dozen things, or even more than that at this point. I don't think I've ever seen like jewelry being offered as like an add-on or a tier reward.
I
So that'd
do
be pretty
think that
cool.
I'm kind of pulling this out of nowhere. I mean, I feel like I've read stuff to kind somewhat support this, but I'm making these numbers up, so
Mhm.
don't quote me. I do think that overall, though, there is still a higher percentage of men who back comics, but
Mm,
we do still have a large enough percentage of women, and but I feel like it's definitely more than 50% male
probably.
back. But that's not to say, I mean, a lot of women like comics and enjoy comics and obviously write comics. So, so yeah, that's the thing with offering the jewelry, is that it is obviously I'm not going to have all of my audience going for it,
Right.
but I think that hopefully there would be enough. I mean, I'm thinking of offering like, 5 or 6, like really limited, really small. So
I think you could
I don't
also
need everybody to
like,
go for it.
yeah, and I also can't think of any comics that I've seen recently that it would like make like a lot of sense to, like if you're kickstarting like, the chartreuse lantern or whatever, right? Legally distinct, but you got like a magic space ring and like a power source for it.
Right.
Like that would probably be like, oh yeah, it makes sense to like
Yeah.
try and get like a custom like piece of jewelry or something
Yeah.
made. Because like I feel like guys like will wear rings.
Yeah.
I
Especially
have
like the
an
larger
indigo
kind of size.
lantern ring that I wear sometimes.
Nice. I have like a set of the plastic ones, but I never actually wear them. I just have them.
Yeah, 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 that's the one. I have the indigo
Mhm.
lantern ring. I got it at Free Comic Book Day
Oh,
back
nice.
when that was like the thing that they were giving out as door
Yeah.
prizes.
Yeah.
And you know what is so weird about that is that the Indigo tribe is the lantern corps that I would actually probably be a part of.
Mhm.
Because like I'm not full of rage. or avarice. I don't think I instill great fear in people. I lack willpower and hope and love. The only thing left is compassion. And like the cool thing about the compassion ring is that it either goes to people who feel and express great compassion,
Mhm.
or it's for people who don't express compassion and it forces them to.
Huh.
So like it would either way, it would really like take my mind over and make me a more compassionate
Right.
person, like, or whatever. But like, yeah, I think it's interesting that like years after I had gotten that ring, like, and I'd started getting to like the Jeff Johns like lantern stuff when
Yeah.
he was coming up with all those different lantern courses, like, huh, that's like the one that I would probably be in.
Yeah.
Weird how the universe does these things sometimes.
Right. Right ring to the right person, unlike Lord of the Rings.
So I know it's like not specifically comics still, but like that's sort of what this podcast is all about. It's just like going off on weird tangents about
Mhm.
interesting things. I was I kind of like get like I didn't know you had a degree in fashion, or like that wasn't something we talked about
Right. No.
previously.
Yeah.
But I was just like 3 days ago, I was telling my dad kind of like how it's interesting how like men's fashion hasn't really evolved over time. And
Well, how
like
much time are we talking about, though?
like it evolves incrementally, like very
Yeah.
subtly, right? Like you look at a man's like a normal men's suit today versus like a couple decades ago. Maybe the cut is a little, snugger to your body, not
Right.
as loose. Maybe the lapel shape's a little different, right? But you can like see like it goes from like nice cut fits to like looser fits and kind of goes back and forth. Maybe there's shoulder pads, maybe there's not, maybe the lapels are big, maybe they're not, maybe the tie is wide, maybe it isn't, right? But like the shape and cut of like a men's suit, you can go back to like the 30s and be like, oh yeah, that kind of looks like a suit that somebody would wear today, right? Like it's like almost 100 years later and it hasn't really evolved all that much. And my dad's rebuttal was like, have you seen some of these things they do at like fashion shows and stuff?
Oh, it's
And I
true.
was like,
Yeah.
yeah, but like that's not functional fashion. That's like
Yeah.
fashion as art, right?
Yeah. A lot
Like
of it. Yeah.
it's not really meant to be worn every day. Like you're not gonna be like the example I used when we had this conversation was like, you're not seeing people going to work in like Lady Gaga's meat dress, but like that
Well,
was a cool thing that happened.
if you think of it as her job and what she's doing, then technically she went to work in it.
True. Yeah.
But
I mean,
no,
that's
not
fair.
for the rest of
I
us.
mean, but like, is going to the red carpet events really part of her job as like a singer? Because there's like lots of musicians and stuff that just ghost those events.
Yeah. I guess if you think of it as like a networking event, maybe.
Yeah,
But
I
it,
mean,
it probably depends on the purpose of why and how they're going.
sure, yeah, again, it like depends on
Yeah.
like this individual person, whether or not they
Yeah.
consider it their job or whatever too. But like
Like
speaking like
if they don't go, would that be bad for their job? I don't know.
hmm, yeah, that's interesting because like there are definitely some people out there where like them being more of a recluse is actually like sort of the allure, right? Like, oh,
Right,
this
right.
person has been, like they never go out, they don't do public appearances,
Yeah.
and it's all about like the art, and they get like this sort of like mystique kind of like built up around like their
What's going on with them and
brand or whatever
right.
because of it, which is kind of interesting. But yeah, someone who like has a background in fashion, sort of like what is your like take on sort of, I guess, what is it's called high fashion, right? Like
Yeah.
where do you like stand on it? Is that something like you're like really into, like you like follow like the red carpet events and stuff, or is that sort of like meh, take it or leave it?
I have not really had like the space to do that recently, but I do really enjoy it. I used to look that up more when I had more time for it. Um, I love seeing that stuff though. We have a fashion week um, in Palm Springs, and not last year, of course,
Mhm.
but we do. And so one year I volunteered to help be a dresser behind the scenes because in college I did have to do a couple shows, and it just kind of took me back. It's a lot of fun seeing all the stuff, seeing everything that they're doing. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff I wouldn't wear, obviously, but it's just really cool to see the stuff they're coming out with, and
And it is more about like the statement, right?
yeah,
It's not about functionality. I mean, half that stuff probably like isn't usable after you take it off, right?
right. And it depends on the show too, because there are a lot of high fashion stuff that is wearable, but it's not stuff that would be wearable to your day job. You still have to be going to like an event,
Yeah.
but it's not like a bubble suit or I can't. I saw something a few days ago and I can't remember what it was now, but I was looking at this and like, yeah, I don't know how they're walking in that.
I recently watched the I don't know I don't remember if it was on the Try Guys channel or not, but Eugene from the Try Guys had gotten an invite to, I think it was this year's Met Gala,
Mm,
and
yeah,
he
I love seeing
put
those pictures.
yeah, he put up a like a behind the scenes kind of like getting
Mhm.
prepared for it and stuff. And like he was trying to do, like this whole sort of like androgynous kind of
Mm,
like men's dress kind of thing. And unfortunately, like he got like a late invite to it, so he didn't really have
mm,
time to like get with a designer. And then like when he did
right.
finally get with a designer, it was like really rushed. He was like, all this other stuff, right? Like long story short, like the dress he was gonna wear like fell through like
Oh,
45-30 minutes
oh
before he
no.
was supposed to go to the event. And so he like had to borrow like one of his friends, like I forget like the designer, but like it was like a
Yeah,
like an Italian like tux, like this
right.
like really high end kind of thing. And like just something that would like go with the rest of the look that was supposed to go with this dress. So he had basically was like, okay, black suit, I guess, because black goes with everything, you know,
Yeah.
kind of thing. And it was like, I'm not into fashion, but this is like a harrowing tale of like
Uh,
insanity, like the things that people go through to like do these events.
yeah.
And yeah, I don't know, it's really wild to like see the behind the scenes of it. It gave me a much greater appreciation for um the kind of things that people do for like the red carpet events and like
Right.
fashion in general. I actually have a friend who's been on the show before, Major Grunge. He's been on a another streamer who I look up to. Haven't had a chance to get her on the show yet, but he's been on a channel, GG Georgie on Twitch, and they had gone through. They've done it multiple times, but they'll go through like red carpet photos, and they'll be
Mhm.
basically play hot or not with like the different styles.
Right.
And those are fun to tune into, even
Yeah.
if you're not like into fashion, because you can still be like, I don't know, it's fun because they're both like into fashion as well.
Right.
um I'm always the one who's like, oh cool, that guy's got like a really nice cut tux and like a single gold chain, pretty cool. And they're like, this is boring. And I'm like, oh.
I mean,
I
it's
don't
boring
know
for like
fashion.
the event that they're at, but it can be a good
Yeah.
non Met Gala look, to say the least. Met Gala is definitely like the kind of go crazy party.
Yeah,
'Cause that's where
there's like a
you want to
lot
bring
of
your most out there thing that you want to wear and do it then. or throw your own party.
It's my party and I'll wear clashing patterns if I want to, is how
Yeah.
that song goes, I'm pretty sure, right? Those are the lyrics.
I love doing I mean, I haven't thrown a party in a while, but I love doing costume parties. I always tell everybody they don't have to dress up, and I would say we get about probably less than half end up dressing up because most people just don't want to be bothered, but it's still fun.
See, I would not dress up, but not because I don't want to, but it's one of the I think it's one of the reasons why I make a fairly good artist. It's I want to be very accurate to the thing that I'm dressing up as, right?
Yeah.
And I got a lot of body image issues that I'm probably gonna work through in therapy once we get past the first few sessions. But for me, and I've always had people tell me oh, it doesn't matter, but it does. I know it doesn't matter to other people. It matters to me, though. I don't want to be I don't want to go to a costume party or a Comic-Con or whatever in full costume and be fat whatever, right? Fat Batman, fat Spider-Man, fat Judge Dredd, I don't know, whatever it is, unless I'm wearing a nice Armani tuxedo suit and shave my head bald and go as Kingpin, right? Unless I'm Kingpin or Santa Claus or Jabba the Hutt or that weird burlap sack filled with worms from Nightmare Before Christmas.
Oh yeah.
I'm not I'm gonna be the fat version of whatever it is, right? So I tend to stay away from cosplay and costuming, not because it's not something I would want to do or be interested in. It's just I just don't want to I just want to be the fat Batman.
Yeah. Well, hopefully nobody would be, saying that. It's oh, you're Batman. But like you were saying, it doesn't matter what other people say. You have to do what's comfortable for you. Yeah. And if you're not comfortable, then it's just kind of not fun.
Right. Yeah. But I have designs, not actual designs, but I have plans to do more Ren Fair stuff and be a wizard and things more original characters where it doesn't really matter, and I'm not trying to represent an established property. But we were talking about having time to do things. There's definitely not something that I have time to do.
So much time.
Yeah,
I don't do sleeves well for whatever reason. I've never figured out how to do that. I don't know, they're kind of confusing. I'm sure if somebody showed me again, I could figure it out. So I did a jacket. I did a what's her name? From Flash. Caitlin, her Killer Frost. And I did her leather jacket, not real leather, but that jacket. And I didn't do the sleeves quite right, so there was a limit to how far I could move my arms. Right. Because it just didn't have enough give. But it looked good as long as you didn't ask me to raise my arms over my head.
I mean, luckily Killer Frost doesn't do a lot of hands aerobic over the head kind of stuff, right? She might do outstretched in front of her, to blast people with ice, but she's not you don't got to do the Superman one fist in the air, knee up kind of thing, at least.
Well, at least you'd have more of a stretchy material, so you wouldn't have the same issue. There's something I was supposed to do with the pattern that I didn't do right, and I'm not sure what it is, but
I no idea. That's something that I've not had any background in at all. I usually get people on here, there's at least something that I can add to the conversation. You start talking about patterns and stuff. The only thing I could offer is I don't know, go to Goodwill and cut on the seams of another leather jacket and trace it.
Yeah. Well, it's weird. I think I kind of modified a pattern I don't know. There was something. Maybe it was meant for stretchier material. I don't. That could have been that too. Because that like fake leather was not very stretchy at all.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I don't know. That's definitely, and that was actually one of the roadblocks that I have had in doing my own sort
And
of
doing the
like
cosplay.
wizard or like sorcerer cosplays. Like the only like patterns I have found have only been for like really, really basic robes that just don't look cool. They're just like,
Yeah.
oh, cool. So like I'm just wearing like a potato sack with sleeves. Okay,
Yeah.
it's like a rectangle on my body.
I wonder if there's someone on Etsy who does or would do like custom patterns, because there's so many things on Etsy that you can find nowadays.
Yeah, I never actually looked for just someone to make a pattern and not like
But I
the
just think
actual
if you
garment.
can't find one already done, or well, there's people on Etsy will
Yeah.
make the whole costume too.
I've
It'd
looked at some
probably be a
of
pretty penny.
those
Yeah.
and that's so expensive.
Yeah.
It's so expensive. I found like a really cool like wizard's hat that
Mhm.
almost looked like like the ridged part of like a bendy straw. Like the
Okay.
hat looked
Right.
like that, and it was like it like formed like sort of like a cool sort of like S curve. Like it folded down and back, and like the tip kind of came back up a little bit. I was like, oh man, that looks like such a cool wizard hat. Like I want that. I don't have $400 to
Ooh.
spend on a custom hat. What?
Yeah. I could see like 400 on like the whole costume. I mean, when I like make a costume, I mean, even though you're making it, like I still spend like 2 to 3 ish.
Hmm.
And then all the time, of course. So,
Yeah.
you know, but 400 for one piece. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know who the person is or like what their reputation is like. Maybe it's worth that much money because they're like a really awesome,
Right.
like well-renowned designer or something.
And I've never made a hat. I don't know. I feel like those are difficult. At least a
Yeah,
good
I
one,
don't know.
a really good hat.
Maybe it's for the medical insurance for the mercury poisoning. Do hatters still have to do that? And is that a thing, or did they like fix the whole mercury thing? Oh man.
I'm trying to follow the reference here. Wait, okay. What are we?
Oh, so the Mad Hatter from
Yeah.
like
Okay. I thought we're
Alice
going
in
there. Uh-huh.
Wonderland.
Yeah.
The term "mad as a hatter" actually comes from the fact that they set some process in the hat making uh process way back when they actually used mercury
Okay.
to do something with the hats, and I don't know exactly what
They
it
would have used
was,
it for, yeah.
but yeah, people were getting mercury poisoning and like going
Right.
insane. So like that was literally like mad as a hatter was like an actual thing because they were like getting mercury poisoning from making hats.
I just like logically cannot think of what they would have had to use that for.
I don't know. I think it, and I'm probably completely wrong on this, but I
I do
think
remember reading something like that. The Mad Hatter was not like it was based off of something with that process, but I don't specifically remember Mercury, but I don't remember what it was. If it was something else.
Yeah, I think it had something. It was either one of two things, and I can't remember which one it is, and it's
Right.
probably neither, because this is like old information that
Right.
I learned when I was like a teenager. But like I think it was either had something to do with like an adhesive like process of like fitting like pieces together,
Mhm.
or it was used as part of like the shaping of hats like that we would normally use like steam for like now,
Yeah.
to kind of like bend the brims of like felt based like cowboy hats and
Yeah.
fedoras or whatever. You would like steam them, but like I think maybe that was part of it, or maybe it was like I said, maybe an adhesive thing. I don't specifically remember, but yeah, no.
It's like you'd think there would have been some other adhesive, but maybe they didn't know about something else or didn't have access to something else. Or
I
because we have
mean,
so many options for glues and adhesives now. It's for like anything you can think of almost.
well, like that's the crazy thing about like science in general and like medical science in particular is like it's not that old. And like, and it wasn't that long ago that people like knew nothing about how the body works. Like a lot of those sort of like dissections and stuff, and a lot of how we learned about what the like the body is and does happened like during Victorian times.
Yeah.
Like, and even then, you know, it was like, oh, those people long ago, they didn't know what they were talking about with, you know, it wasn't demonic possession that's making your daughter's, you know, stomach cramp up. No, 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 no. It's an imbalance of the four humors, and she has a toad growing in her stomach. You know, like they even in the Victorian times, they didn't like have a good idea of what they were doing. In fact, they used to drink like irradiated stuff. Like,
I think I've seen that in some shows, like they talked about that. Or
yeah, I was watching a thing on YouTube like earlier today about it, and there was like a guy who was drinking this like I think it was like called Rontium or something. But like it was made with something. It was like this like a name, right? Like a brand name. And I think it had like I forget what element it was in, but it was like a radioactive element. This guy was like drinking like 3 bottles a day, like these little like 5-hour energy shot kind of vials of this stuff a day, until his literal jaw dropped off.
Oh my god.
Yeah, no, his like jaw fell off. And like there was people like drinking out of uranium glasses, like literally just like green glowing glasses, and like people playing with just like plutonium and just anything that glowed, and it was like this is like, oh yeah, this is cool. And they had no idea why people were getting cancer and dying.
But I just think now of like all the things that are like cancer warning, cancer warning, cancer warning, and I'm like, I cannot be bothered with everything in my house. I just can't. There's a limit to what I can be bothered about. Like, you know, non-stick pans and non-stick pans and like all this other stuff. And some of it I'm like, okay, this is easy for me to substitute, and other things I'm like, you know what, whatever.
I mean, cancer is gonna happen, right? Like your telomeres get too short. Like, yeah, you can't. It's like something's gonna like your body's gonna break down, and you're gonna die anyway. It's like whatever.
Not to like make light of cancer, but
yeah, I mean, well, yeah, but it's
everything out of our life that like has a cancer warning, we'd be left with like
very little.
Yeah,
you know, so you know, eat that arsenic tablet to make your skin paler, and put some belladonna in your eyes or whatever it was that they used to do in Victorian times. That was like whatever, right?
It is interesting. I made nail polish for like, I don't know, a year and a half or so, to sell. And I just the profit margin on comics is not like super great either. But again, it ended up being like a passion thing where I was like, wow, I don't have enough in me to want to do this and, you know, make this much off of it. So I'm like, I'm not gonna do it. But it was really a cool process. And cosmetic regulations in the US and the EU are a little bit different. So you can get these more like neon colors are more approved in the EU than they are in the US. And anyway, it's interesting. I'm not actually sure the reasoning, because I don't think that they're all that unsafe. They might be unsafe for lips. Anything that goes on your lips has a little bit of a stricter warning, which is good because, you know, it's ingested more easily. Obviously,
I use asbestos lipstick, so I think I'm pretty safe. Look, I don't want my lips to get set on fire when I'm smoking my cigarettes.
Right? Does it enhance the natural color?
Yeah, it stings a little bit, but it makes my lips nice and red. Yeah, there's like some pretty cool restrictions and stuff. I think I could be wrong about this. I don't know if it was the EU or if it was England or somewhere, but there was,
Right.
I know for a fact that UV, like glow in the dark tattoos, are illegal in the United States, but I think there is a place in the world where you can
You
still
can get it.
get black light ink tattooed into you so
Huh.
that you glow at a rave, which is something that like I don't have any tattoos. I have like a full left sleeve like planned.
Right.
I just haven't like, you know, pulled the lever on
Oh,
it yet.
yeah. Yeah.
But I also like sometimes flip flop back and forth between doing like my like family's sort of like coat of arms on my like left shoulder, because that
Mm-hmm.
would be my shield arm, and then like having like one of the, you know, like those airbrushed like dragon fighting a wizard on the side of his van from like the
Right.
70s, like
Yeah.
doing the rest of my arm like that. I like flip flop back and forth between like that idea or covering my entire body in like arcane runes and like Doctor Strange style like
Uh-huh.
magic circles, and like all like connecting with like lines like that follow like my like arteries and stuff like throughout my body, but like all in black light so that you can't
Oh my
see it
gosh.
unless like I'm in
Right.
like black light. Because like how crazy would it be, right? Just
Oh.
like some normal dude until you turn on a black light and then he like starts glowing with magic runes and stuff. Like that'd be insane. That'd be crazy.
I mean, especially with all the people taking drugs there.
Right. You could like wear like those whiteout like contacts so your eyes are like
Oh yeah.
glowing too. Just be like, I am the Metatron. Just like
Oh my god.
freak people out.
I don't know. Some people might believe you and like start worshiping you.
Hey, I'm cool with that. I low key have like started my own religion, so that's fine with me. Hey, you know, just
It's definitely better than accidentally summoning the demons when
mm-hmm.
you know, have all the symbols on you. So
Yeah, you know, I hear the Catholics charge you like 10% in a tithe. I'm only gonna charge you 9% in a tithe, so you save money if you come over here. Oh man, but so like we've spent this whole time talking about everything but your
yeah, we
comics.
talked a little bit about creating in the at one point.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit
All right.
about your upcoming or well, I guess when this goes out, you will be currently in the throes
Yeah.
of the Kickstarter for, I believe it's Fangs and Foul Play that you're kickstarting,
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah, and it's a combined issue 0 and issue 1. So we're going to print them together.
So tell us a little bit about that. Like what's the story all about? And like who are the main characters and all that good stuff.
Yeah. So Fangs and Foul Play is a light horror comic, and it's about a telepathic vampiric cat in a Victorian town who just wants to eat. Meanwhile, a conflicted ex-colonel just wants to do the right thing, but becomes enslaved to the vampiric cat Fang. And poor Richard just can't get away from people trying to make him do horrible things. People or cats trying to make him do horrible things. So our main characters are Richard Bluth, and I had to make sure that that wasn't a Bluth name in the Arrested Development. I don't know, for some reason that last name was on my mind when I was giving him his name. I was like, okay, I can keep it as long as it's not the full name of anybody in that show. So all right, we're good. And then of course, obviously Fang's name was easy to come up with because he's a vampiric cat with fangs. It just
Right.
made sense. So those are our two main characters, protagonist, antagonist. And then there will be more characters introduced. In issue 0 is just the two of them, and then issue 1 we start meeting more people from the town of Bloodville, and more of the characters there.
So what was your inspiration for this story? Because I've seen a lot of like different you know, vampire stories over the years, but I've never seen like vampiric animals.
Yeah, well, I'm a cat person. I have a lot of cats, so you know, and I wanted to, like, I know this sounds a little bit markety, but I'm going for long-term stuff here. So like, okay, what's cute? What do people like? Cats. But it actually came to me, like, I'd been trying to think of when I had gotten into an anthology, and I was like, I like doing this. If I want to do this and continue doing it, I'm gonna have to do like a full-length thing. What do I want to do? And I didn't have an idea for like months. I had ideas, but they didn't lend themselves to a comic. And I think it's really important when evaluating an idea to figure out what medium it suits best. So I have like folders of short stories ideas, novel ideas, poetry. I have hundreds of snippets for poems. Just hundreds of snippets. I have many more done poems, thankfully, but I still have a ton of like unfinished lines and pieces. Ideas for films, whatever. Every once in a while I'll revisit them and be like, what, this actually works better as this, or whatever. But I didn't have a good full-length comic idea, and I was sitting in bed one night and this picture came to me of this cat, just like with this bloody knife. It's basically the cover for issue 1, which is why I was super like, usually I'll ask the artist like, hey, do you have any ideas? But for this very particular one, I was like, this has to be the cover, because I had this idea of this cat that had like just fed, and he's got this blood on the napkin, and I was like, oh, that'd be really cool. And then I was like, okay, so I want like a butler-like character, which kind of Richard isn't really like, I mean, in a way he's a butler to Fang, but nobody else sees him that way.
Right.
They think that he's the owner of the house. He's, he runs the show, not Fang. And he has to serve this cat. So that's kind of how it started out. And then I sat on it for a little while. I had to really let it percolate before it came into like a fully formed idea. And there's still parts I have to figure out. There's still some backstory that I got to figure out. But I've started to piece together those various things so that it won't be, we won't have all these holes later on if it comes to that.
So what is your process like when it comes to, I guess, a two-part question. I'll ask the first part first, and then I'll write down the other part.
Okay.
So I don't forget to ask it. But what's your process like? And this is something I totally agree with as someone who I used to write songs. I also used to like dabble in poetry, majored in film. So like, how do you determine a story and like where it should live? Like, how do you know what something should be a comic or a short story or a poem or whatever?
Poetry is usually easier for me because I rarely write speculative poetry. Occasionally I will, but it's usually a bit more grounded in reality. I mean, I will have metaphors, obviously, but a line will come to me for a poem and I'm like, this is solidly a poem. It's, I'm talking about depression or whatever, and not that we don't talk about those in other stories. I certainly can and do. But it was like, I was watching some clouds come over the mountain, and so I was like, oh, the clouds top the mountain. I was like, okay, that's a poem. And that's not gonna be a short story. I mean, it could be in a short story, but
right.
That's usually a pretty easy process. I haven't done a lot of songwriting, and my singing teacher tells me I need to do it. So I guess I need to do that one day. So that's a little bit more difficult for me. Short story versus comic or like film script. I mean, usually I'll kind of write it down. I'm trying to think, do I have an established process here? I think that when I think of it first, I usually have something in mind for what it's going to be. And then sometimes I'll look at it and I'll be like, no, this doesn't work that way. This has to be this. Some of it will also have to do with what I want it to be.
Right.
And as long as it works and the medium that I want it to be, then that's what I'm going to do. But every once in a while, I'm like, no, this just isn't going to, maybe I want this to be a novel, but it's not going to work that way, because writing, I have not written a full-length novel, but writing a novel, I don't have to pay an artist. I mean, I do have to pay for a cover. I have to pay for a cover artist, maybe back cover, but
So you don't have to pay a page rate.
right. So in a little,
Yeah.
aside from my time, it's a little bit cheaper. Or for a short story, of course, that's much easier to do.
Yeah.
But if I think that the idea is going to really fit a comic, then it's like, okay, well, this is the comic, and it probably won't get made for 5 to 6 years because I have so many projects already in the queue. So we can only do so much.
How that feels. I think I'm pretty much the same way. Like I'll start with like, oh, I'm gonna write a comic book, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then like for me, I tend to not go outside of that because the thing that I really like to do is, draw pages, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
my writing more serves the art. So if an idea doesn't feel like a comic to me, I'll put it on the back burner and like maybe I'll get to it one day, maybe not. I don't know. But I definitely kind of think like it's one of these, like when you said you have an idea in mind of like what you want to do as far as like format.
Yeah.
You start thinking of ideas, and then somewhere along the lines it either clicks into place that yes, this is good and like full steam ahead, or it's like maybe not, and then you like gotta switch gears somewhere, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know if I have a process to determine that either. It's sort of just like a gut instinct. I definitely know like the
Well, and I
length
think
plays
that
a
if you
factor in
can't,
it too.
yes, yeah, and how much you need to really dive into the world, and there's different that with a novel you can get more detailed than with a comic, because with a comic you're jumping from panel to panel, so there's stuff that happens in between the panels, in between the pages that we're not seeing.
Yeah.
So if you want somebody to see those, then that's probably not going to be a comic.
Unless you decide to do something weird with your comic, like in
make a new format.
Yeah, or just like combined formats, right? Because I think it was, man, I'm probably gonna sound like such an idiot for even suggesting this if I'm wrong, but I think it was Watchmen that had actual segments of prose in it. Like I think were like long journal entries or something.
Prolific, so yeah.
I know there was the comic within a comic. I know they did like that sort of piratey, like seafaring adventure within the pages of Watchmen. But I think there was also like actual prose segments in there. It was either that or V for Vendetta.
I don't recall of him, but I do recall that he's got some like extremely long dialogue and parts, things that most of us can't get away with.
Right. But yeah, it's always an option to like sort of genre mash or whatever, and try and like figure out like how you can play with the sort of juxtaposition of words and imagery, like it's always an option to toss like those big, more weighty pieces of text, like in an actual letter within the actual world, and you're like, oh, this person's reading a letter, let me do a full page splash of the letter and just like write the letter, or whatever it is. The other thing I was going to ask, so part 2 of the sort of how do you like, what's your writing process like once you know what your story is going to live as, and this is something that's actually pretty pertinent to just me wanting to know this, because I might be able to use some of these tips myself as I'm writing a graphic novel right now. How do you go about closing plot holes? I know you had mentioned that a little bit before I ask these questions.
So doing it as like I'm doing single issues right now, and as long as I don't accidentally leave anything too big, I'm okay to come back. But I do outline each issue, and then I outline each volume.
Okay.
Not necessarily in that. Well, okay, I had a very rough volume 1 outline. Like I was like, okay, this is the beginning, this is the end. I don't know everything that's happening in between just yet.
Right.
And then I wrote issue 1. I outlined issue 1, I wrote issue 1. And it's funny because Chuck Pino, my editor, I showed him my outline. He's like, this isn't really an outline. You just kind of wrote down exactly what you're going to do on each page. I'm like, it's a very detailed outline. I don't care. It's, you know, outlines are usually a little bit rougher than what I end up going with. But I wanted to really, partially because I needed to know exactly how many pages it was going to be.
Yeah.
So I very clearly detailed what was going to happen on each page, and then I fleshed out from there. My first draft outline is more rough. It's like a paragraph.
Mm-hmm.
And then I go more detailed. So I have, at this point, I've outlined issue 2, and 3 and 4 are rough outlines.
Okay.
Actually, I don't think that's in there. Have I don't think I've completely out. I've done a 3 and 4 are like really loose outlines, and issue 2 is a little bit more drafted, but I haven't gotten it down to the page just yet. So that'll be my next step. I had a really big plot hole for a while where I was like, okay, why? So Fang can't leave the house. And for the longest time, I didn't know why. So I had to decide why he couldn't leave the house. Like I had a couple of ideas in mind. And so it was kind of just a matter of, okay, what is going to work best here?
It's
so, and
simple.
I'm not going to divulge that because we're not finding out just yet. So.
I know exactly why it is. It's because architecture is hard, and fuck the artist. Everything's inside this house. Everything's got to be like really pristine lines and like mechanically precise art that you can't freehand, and it's just like hell to draw, right? Like that's what it is. It's like, yeah, fuck the artist, right?
Well,
I do that to myself all the time.
Oh man, yeah. I figure eventually people are going to ask, and you know, so it's going to come up. So it's, you know, it's one of the little mysteries. But I was like, I have to figure this out before this issue. So I did figure it out, and then I had to come up with how Fang became a vampire in the first place, and what happened to the family who lived there. And this is all stuff that I didn't need to know it for issue 0 and 1.
Mm-hmm.
But I did get to the point where I was like, okay, I have to know this now.
Right.
I don't think it's coming out in issue 2, but I didn't feel comfortable not knowing it and moving too far ahead. So at this point, we've figured those details. Maybe not down to the letter, but enough that I can move forward, and they will be revealed eventually.
Nice. So you mentioned like when you did this project that you had like the beginning and the end, and you're working now to fill in the gaps between the two.
Yeah.
Do you know how many issues it's going to be roughly, or is that sort of open-ended as well?
I have the first. I actually have. It's going to be 3 to 4 volumes, and you know, I mean, unless it flops, of course. So hopefully everybody likes it and it goes well. And I have a very rough outline for the other volumes. I'm planning on like making them around a similar issue count. But volume 1 is going to be around 4 issues unless something changes. I'm planning on 4 issues. And then of course we have the 0 issue.
Okay.
So it's like 4.5.
Okay. Man, that sounds a lot more manageable than the idea that I have for my graphic novel. Oh my God.
I do have, you know, like I said, I have other volumes that are coming out. So it really is a longer property if all goes well. But I didn't want the singular volumes to go too long.
Yeah, see, that's not what I did. No, I kind of, so like you mentioned like reaching a point in your writing process where you're like, okay, I know it may not be in this issue, but like I need to know X, Y, and Z. Yeah. I got to the same point when I was doing my first attempt at the Osran Tales, which is like my medieval fantasy thing as compared to Osran West or Osran Noir, right? Okay. Tales being like fantasy, right? But like I I wrote a 3-issue story arc called Obligatory Questing, which I gave out as like one of the tier rewards to this
Right.
last um Kickstarter that I did. And I went like I finished that up, and like I noticed a few, issues here and there with it. Like, okay, whatever. It was like the first storyline that I had like finished. Knew
Yeah.
there was gonna be some plot holes. I was like, but okay, like I know I want this to like tell X story. Now I kind of need to know what that story is because I found it really hard.
Yeah.
Um, it was weird, right? They talk about how like, oh yeah, the first novel is the easiest. It's the second one that's the hard one, to like gotta get okay, crap, I did this once, but now what do I like, how do I do it
Right.
again? Can be like really difficult for writers. And I, in my hubris, was like, issue 1 was simple. Issue 2, also pretty easy. I got this in the bag. The second one was easy. I'm not gonna fall victim. No, it's the story, right? It's the
Yeah.
story arc. It's not like the one chapter, right? Because that's like what
Yeah.
issues of a comic basically is, right? It's like
Right.
chapters or like a couple of chapters of a story. And so like I got to the second story arc and I was just like, I have no idea how to do this. Like I don't know what the hell's going on. I don't know exactly, like I kind of know where I want it to end up, but I don't know how
Right.
to get from A to Z. Like I don't know steps B through Y. So I have no idea what needs to be in the second story arc. And through my like writing process of like, okay, I'm actually going to sit down, I'm going to plot this whole thing out, I'm going to figure it all out. um my first draft of the story ended up like being pretty clear that with my initial idea there would be
Uh-huh.
4 really distinct phases that the characters would go through. And I was like, okay, it's cool. That's 4 volumes. Neat. I
Yeah.
started working on like the first one with my writing partner,
Mhm.
Mr. Abstract, who I think you know.
Yeah.
We started working on it, and I was like, oh, like there seems to be about like 10 parts to like this first story. I was like, cool. That's like 10 issues. Let's do. We go in and we'll do 10 issues, and we like wrote all that. We got like some feedback from like sensitivity readers and whatnot, because neither of us are trans women, and that's
Mhm.
like who the main character just ended up needing to be
Right.
as we like started like adding characters and stuff. And like the 2 characters who I originally thought were going to be the main characters kind of weren't as interesting as like the other characters we were inventing for the story. And then it like really just clicks better if we use Izzy as the main character.
Mhm.
And so like obviously that comes with like a whole host of like, well, we're not writing from our own experience. And
Yeah.
through the feedback we got, it was like, oh man, okay, so we're like rushing this relationship story, like we need to like slow it down. And then I got an app called Plotter. I don't know if you're
Oh,
familiar
I
with
have it and
that.
I haven't used it. I was like, maybe I should actually try this one day.
So like what's really cool about that is like it's got story beats like pre-programmed
Right.
into it, which I found really helpful. Like I know about Harmon's story wheel, like I know
Yeah.
like the 3-act like
Mhm.
structure for like the heroic journey, and I know like some of that stuff, but there was like other things in there
Save
like
the cat.
yeah, like I know, but then there's like other things like 12 steps to a mystery story or like 7 steps
Mm.
to a romantic comedy. I was like, oh, there's like
Yeah.
all this other stuff here. So I started like looking into it,
Mhm.
and through like reworking for the stuff that I got to the editors and the sensitivity readers and stuff, and like working through with like putting my plot into Plotter to see like
Mhm.
it was really funny, like my action adventure plot pretty much one for one hits all the beats of like the
Nice.
action adventure plot,
Yeah.
because I that's like the genre that I most
Right.
enjoy watching as well. So it's like something I'm like just innately kind of know what to do. um as I
I
say,
think it's
know
funny
and
when
do
you
together.
like, yeah. I think it's funny when you kind of know those things and then you watch movies and you're like, okay, they're gonna do this next. Okay, they're gonna do this
Hmm.
next.
And I had like a little bit of like, the a cheat into it, right? Because I
Mhm.
did I dropped out of film school my junior year, So I had like the writing courses and
Yeah.
stuff for that, but like what was interesting about Plotter is like, oh cool, and like I was going through, it's like, man, I'm really having trouble coming up with like all the beats to the romantic
Mm.
subplot through this thing. And then there was like one part at which, like in the heroic journey, like the in an action adventures, like the hero's supposed to get captured by the bad guy, and they either need to escape or their allies need to like try and save them. And I was trying to bridge the gap between, like, volume 1 is supposed to have Izzy and Milos kind of like meet and like come together, and then issue 2 is gonna like jump forward 13 years and they were gonna like be a couple and like have raised like a kid together.
Mhm.
And I was like, I know that's something, like if I can get them together by the end of volume 1, that audiences would be like, okay, that's a little abrupt, but whatever, it's a long enough time jump
Yeah.
that, okay, things went okay with their relationship, fine, now they're like a couple and they have a kid, whatever. But as I was like doing the edits and stuff, I made bad because now there's 50 issues instead of 40 issues. I had to insert like a whole, like another volume, which I think
Yeah.
is going to be for the best. Because that allows me to stretch out their relationship for 2 volumes, so I don't have to rush anything in volume 1, because there really wasn't enough space for it. But man, I just like listening to you. You're like, yeah, I got like 3 or 4 volumes, and they're like 4 or 5 issues each. I'm like, that's like half of what I'm doing.
Right.
Like, my
I
God, why
mean,
do I always
there
do
are
this to myself?
definitely properties that are that big, right? You know?
That's true. Yeah. I mean, one of my favorite comics of all time is Chew, by John Layman and Rob Guillory, and that's like 60 issues.
Mhm.
Um, but like I'm really confident. Like I know I'm a fast artist. Um, I can easily do an issue a month, like once I like get stuff rolling. And that's
Yeah,
sort of
like a
like,
volume a year, roughly.
yeah, it's a little bit like, it's about a volume a year as long as I can stay on track once
Yeah.
they're all written. And then I'll need some time to like actually write and work on the next one.
Right. Yeah.
Because I don't know if I'll have the time to do that while producing issues.
Yeah. And if you're doing
Um,
Kickstarter, you need some time to get
yeah,
through that.
yeah. This is like actually why I brought it up, because like for me, I have like each volume plotted out
Mm-hmm.
pretty much. In what is now volume 4 and 5, there's like a couple of like blank issues in there that I don't have anything for, but I at least know like where each volume starts and ends, and I kind of like know what it's going to be. But I was like, yeah, those are so far down the line, like I don't need to worry about it. But
Yeah, I
like,
don't think you need to have every single detail filled in now, and
yeah, but it's that fear of having unresolved plot holes that has like
right.
made me hyper vigilant about
Uh-huh.
the planning phase, to the point where like I don't think I'll be comfortable starting to draw it like volume 1 until I have volume 2 plotted out issue by issue. I don't need to like have them broken down to like pages and
Right.
like panels and like dialogue or anything, but like as long as I know that all of the threads from volume 1 that need to be talked about in volume 2 are like talked about and like accounted for, like once, until that's done, like I don't think I'll be able to like really sink my teeth in and start producing this book. Because like I don't know, there's so many books out there that plot threads are just dropped, you
Yeah.
know. And it's a big anxiety of mine coming from a dungeon master's like D&D perspective, where plot threads can drop and fizzle out all the time because it doesn't really matter, right? You're going week to week and people don't remember the things that you talked about 4 months ago. Whatever, throw them out, it doesn't matter. You know. But like when you're writing a story, like it does matter. You
Yeah.
know, which I think is I don't know, very anxiety inducing for me.
I feel like there are probably very few books though that are perfect and don't have something missed. and most people are going to be forgiving unless you just like drop something really, really major.
Yeah,
And
it's
like
like
the story stops making sense or something.
yeah, I guess it would be like if Independence Day, like, you know, hinted at the aliens, but then they never came. Like, people would be mad, probably. So at the end of our podcasts here, I typically like to ask a question, sort of open-ended question. Let me see if I can find it here. Um you know, this one fits in almost, well, I got two. I think one's just really cute and simple. Both of these come from a Patreon member, patreon.com/Folsham_art if you want your questions to be prioritized over other people. Otherwise, find the links in the description below and join my Discord community, where you can find a general submission form if you want to ask questions to be featured here at the end of Thought Balloons. This one comes from Patreon subscriber Brandon. Both of these actually come from Brandon. The first one, kind of cute. Would it be acceptable to refer to a vampire cat as a meow pyre? What is your opinion on meow pyres?
Would it be acceptable? I don't think it would be unacceptable.
I think it's horribly offensive. Just because it's a really bad pun. It's just a really bad pun. Meow and vamp don't even sound alike, Brandon.
You know, I think I've had one person say this before, and I'm partial to it, was a vampire.
See, that's better. A vampire is so much better than a meow pyre. So no,
we could ask Fang, but I feel like Fang would be offended by any nickname, honestly.
Oh yeah, because it's like it's a reductivist, like to make a pun out of what a person or a cat in this case is, right? I think so Brandon, a good friend of mine, and you know, you're wrong. No. I think we landed on no, it's not acceptable. But to answer your other question,
I was trying to think if we can put Meow into the name in any way, and
it really just doesn't work. It really just doesn't work. But
that
the
one, I want to
other
make
question,
it work, but I'm just not sure how.
yeah. Other question though, I think is ripe with a little bit of conversation.
Okay.
What method would cats use to dominate the world?
They don't already?
See, that was what I was thinking. The internet exists. They won.
Mine definitely rule my day sometimes.
Mhm.
Okay, but what would they like actually use? I mean, they can knock a lot of our stuff off the counters. Can they use that in a way to like actually dominate the world? I don't know.
Is it like a Rube Goldberg machine where they like knock the thing off the counter and the glass like lands on the nuclear launch button?
Oh gosh. Yeah, but I don't know if they would survive. So
I mean, some of them would, right?
yeah, some of them probably would. Yeah.
There's that Love, Death, and Robots thing with the cats and the robots in the apocalypse, right?
I don't know if I have or have not seen that episode. I have seen a couple episodes.
I think it's in the first season.
You know,
it's a pretty good one.
I don't see a lot of cats in vampire shows. Like, I see or not vampires, in zombie shows. There's always the dogs, but I'm like, where are the cats? The cats. I feel like the cats actually would do pretty well in a zombie apocalypse. I mean, they wouldn't be getting hand fed, but
yeah,
I feel like they would avoid the zombies. Like, sadly, I see, too many dogs get eaten, and it just makes me sad. I'm like, okay, can we stop showing this? But don't really see cats very often, and I think they
Or
do. I think they do okay.
Cats don't really go for like carrion, do they? Like dogs will like eat anything. Like dogs will eat poop. I
Yeah.
don't think a dog would necessarily be turned off by the idea of like a rotting human corpse as far as like
Well, no,
eating it.
cats will eat people.
That's true. I mean, yeah, if you
Given
like die in your
like if
apartment.
they don't have any alternative, if they're starving. I don't know that.
Yeah.
I don't think they will go for the corpse if they have other things to eat. So they probably would still be going for the rats and the other things
Right.
outside.
Small birds, the
Yeah.
squirrels, things like that.
So I think they do okay in the zombie apocalypse because they're not going to get caught the way the dogs do.
That's true.
Which makes me feel better
Yeah.
about my cats and letting them go because my dogs bark way too much and they would like
Yeah, the zombies would come right to him, and then they'd be like, "Oh, it's like a human thing, but it smells like butt. Cool." And then they go over to it, and then the zombie eats them. Yeah, like dogs. I don't know how the ones that are like in every zombie thing, like how do they survive? Dogs are too dumb. I
They
love
have to
them,
be
but
quiet. I think there's some smart dogs, but they have to be quiet, no more of this barking stuff.
yeah, yeah. I don't know. I think, for my answer to this question, because I like to answer these things too. Honestly, I think the cats already have like an inborn way to do this. They just need to figure out how to weaponize that like brain parasite that they like people get from the cats that like make you even like more into cats than you already are or whatever it is. Like I forget what it's called, but like don't cats have that like sort of like brain worm parasite thing that they like infect people with?
I know what you're talking about. I can't remember the like specifics, the details about it.
Yeah, so that they'd use that.
But
They'd weaponize
they
that.
they've adapted to like, they don't meow in like the wild. I mean, the kittens
Yeah.
meow, but the cats don't really meow in the wild. They only meow to get our attention. And we think mostly we think it's cute, except when they like, yell, meow, yell, then it's not so cute.
Right.
So, but they figured out that. They figured out how to get us to feed them.
Yeah, I honestly like I don't, oh man. Now we're kind of like getting off like the cute fun version of the question
Right?
here. But honestly, like I have to wonder like where do world leaders fall on the sort of like are you a cat person, are you a dog person scale? Because like a lot of like the world leaders feel like to me to be the kind of people that would be cat people and not dog people. Just saying, maybe cats already dominate the world. Maybe cats are the ones in control of the people who control us.
Right. They're secretly running everything. It's not the lizard people, it's the cat people.
Yeah, but not in like a literal sort of like
Right.
tabaxi or like Khajiit cat people, but just like people who like cats.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for carving out some time to be on Thought Balloons, Leanne. This is the part of the show where I like to turn it over to you. Let the people know where they can find you. I'll link whatever you want me to link in the descriptions and in the YouTube video. But yeah, take it away. Where can people find you?
Yeah. You can find me at linktree/headlessgnomes.com. So it's like linktr.ee/headlessgnomes. Did I say .com at the end of that the first time? There's no .com. You can also find me on most platforms with either at Headless Gnomes or at LK Ingino, depending on like one's my business brand and one is at, a little bit more me personally. So if you go for the LK Ingino, you get poetry and other stuff too.
Cool.
And my website is headlessgnomes.com. And we have for Fangs and Foul Play, if you want to follow the Kickstarter, it's fangsandfoulplay.com.
Awesome. fangsandfoulplay.com. That is live right now as of the release of this podcast, not as of the recording, but when this goes live, that will be out. So fangsandfoulplay.com. Is that an ampersand or the word and?
The word. I don't think we can Can we do ands and URLs? I don't think
I have no idea, but it's the whole thing. Fangs and Foul Play, all written out.com. Go support the Kickstarter. I was lucky enough to read issue 0. I think it is a very charming story, and I'm not even a cat person. So there you go. I have no allegiance to the animal at all. I prefer dogs, but I think it's a pretty fun story. And if I haven't already, I will be backing this Kickstarter. And yeah, thank you for being on the show.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
I'm not doing any ad breaks this time. I've kind of like done away with them. Ads are stupid. So in lieu of an ad break in this episode, again, I'm just going to shout out patreon.com/Fulsham_art if you want to support the podcast or the things that I do. We have lots of tiers, various things, but you only have to support at $1 if you want to ask a show or ask a question to be on the show. You could ask a show too. That probably won't get you as many results though. Thank you all for listening, and we'll see you next time on Thought Balloons.